and through there, you start. But that's one thing that I learned, that it's kind of like, the way. He was a military man. He was involved in battles. He was out there in the jungle fighting and doing, playing a game which is life and death. You think he'd been born with lions, He'd grown up in a cage with lions, because he was fearless, and it's quite the contrary.
Yeah, especially, an asthmatic doesn't usually grow up fearless, that's for sure.
Right.
And speaking of his asthma, as the movie goes on, he gets more sickly with the asthma, and I understand that you lost some 35 pounds in order to play those scenes when you were playing him ill. Is that right?
Well, it's at the end of the second movie, which is the end of his life, and the Bolivian, they were in dire straits. Very little food was available. They were on the run. They were sick. They were really falling apart. And Che was no different. And the asthma was right on his. He had asthma attacks quite often. So I came in lean. As lean as I could get.
How do you do that?
There's no secret to that. You got to get up early in the morning. You got to run. You got to watch what you eat.
What was the hardest thing for you to give up?
Pizza.
Pepperoni?
You know what? Give it to me any which way. I'll eat it.
Anchovies?
No. Anchovies. Okay.
Nobody
there's
likes
some
the
limits.
anchovies.
Yeah. There's some limits.
Yeah, really. And then gaining it back, you just go back to the pizza?
Well, I don't want to gain it back. I want to, now I've been traveling so much. It's hard to keep a diet and keep a routine when you're traveling. And I've been traveling all over the place. I was in Japan. I was in Miami. I was in Cuba. I was in Puerto Rico, Boston. I'm now in Washington D.C. I'm going to LA tomorrow. So it's really hard to keep a routine. So every now and then you got to squeeze that local hamburger.
There are a lot of people who only know Che from what they've seen in Evita. They probably expect to come into this thing hearing you sing during the movie, and yet you sing no songs. I mean,
actually, he was. I understand he was not too much of a dancer. He was not. He wouldn't sing either. He wasn't a singer. He wasn't too musical. I mean, he liked some tangos and he liked some music, but he was not a musical. He didn't have the musical ear.
Well, how do you get somebody to go into a theater to learn about somebody who they may or may not know anything about, and to go in knowing that the thing is 4 hours and 17 minutes or 4 hours and a half, whatever it is? That's a pretty big commitment. How do you persuade somebody to do that?
I come here to your studio and I sit down with you and I talk about it, and hopefully we can. I think that they'll. If they want to learn a little bit something new, this might be one of those movies that you learn something. Right? There is a lot of it's action packed. It's historical. There's good looking girls.
Yeah,
good-looking guys.
Yeah, them too.
It's like there's some beautiful views. It was shot in Spain, Mexico, Puerto Rico, New York, Bolivia. There's some great vistas. There's good music, great photography. I think hey, the movie didn't get nominated, but I think it's as good as any of the movies that got nominated, and I'll get up on any desk and say it.
Do you think that people need to see it back to back, or can they see part one and then?
Well, I think that in order to get what we try to do, to understand our artistic liberty, the movie has to be seen part one and part two. You have to see it all, otherwise you're just getting half the slice of pizza. half the burger, half the basketball game, half the game, in a way.
But what about seeing? Can you see it part one on a Saturday and part two a month from then, or do you recommend
if
you
you
see them
do,
back
then
to
you
back?
can't criticize it yet. You gotta get the whole feeling, and then you can make your statements about it. And you can have your sayings. I think that you need to see it. You need to understand what we set out to do, because we can't do the whole life of Che in 4 hours. You can't do it in 8 hours, or 10 hours. We probably could do it in 10 hours. But what we
Director's cut.
Yeah, the director's cut. Yeah, the long cut, no cut, the director's no cut. It'd be kind of like impossible. So what we did is we took the last year of his life and we explained who this guy was, so we can see him in the last year of his life, and we do a quick. In 2.5 hours, we do a quick synopsis of who this guy was and what was moving him, and so. If you see one, then you're not seeing the whole picture of what we set out to do. I'm talking about for the director and everyone involved, the writers, the art departments. Everything is kind of like it all comes together as one. You get the whole journey, the ups and the downs.
Were you a cigar smoker before making this movie?
Became more of a cigar smoker doing this movie. Let's put it that way. I tell you, there's very little. Che Guevara was photographed quite a bit all through his revolutionary life, and there are very few pictures without a cigar.
Well, they didn't turn you green then. You were okay with them?
Yeah, I was okay with them. The ones that I was smoking in the movie were not actually Cuban cigars, which are the best in the world. And because of the embargo, we can't get Cuban cigars.
Or so you say. I mean, you were in Cuba. You met Fidel. He didn't slip you any Cuban cigars?
Yeah, I brought some across, and they were, and I was able to get them in the States with no problem, because they were for personal use. And but while you're doing a movie, you need tons of them, so you can chop them up, and the prop department, we didn't have the budget to really do the Cuban cigar thing.
Well, before I lose you, I want to talk about the Wolfman a little bit. What's it like for you, you are a horror movie fan, to get to play the Wolfman? That must have been awfully cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's kind of like a childhood dream, It's like Back to the Future kind of thing, It's like if someone would have told me when I was 10 that I was going to be playing the Wolfman when I was growing up, I wouldn't believe them. And now I'm doing it, and so it's kind of like a little nostalgic trip.
Were you more fidgety having the makeup taken off or put on?
Taking it off is the real problem.
Why?
Because when you're putting it on, it's fun. It's happening. You're evolving. You're turning into this Wolfman, and we had a great team of people working on it. Rick Baker was the head of the makeup department, who it's one of the best in the world, arguably the best, and a big fan of these horror movies, of the classic Universal horror movies. So it was fun putting it on. But then when you're taking it off, it's about 2 hours. Everybody goes home. You're sweaty. You're exhausted. And it's like someone trying to scrape your skin off, because that's glued pretty good, and the paint that they put is like really like good paint, but I was lucky to have good people there, and we had good tunes, and
What sort of music did you play?
Well, one album that was in heavy rotation there was Nick Cave's A Dig Lazarus Dig is his last album.
Good.
Yeah.
And what did you think the first time you saw yourself in the mirror with the makeup on?
The first time I saw myself in the mirror was pretty exciting. It was like, here we go, Halloween all over again. Halloween in the middle of July. It was.
So now you've played a wolf man and a dog-faced boy. So what other kind of animal would you like to turn into?
Well, it seems like I get stuck with the fangs and the teeth, But I think I'm pretty good for now. I bookend that one,
All right. Thank you very